The screen you are holding is made of sand, not a metaphor, literally beach sand, and the only reason it exists is a mistake made in a kiln, 4,500 years ago. Nobody planned it, nobody was trying, they were doing something else entirely, and whatever they threw away that day changed everything. It changed science, it changed civilization, it changed what you can see, what you know, and how far you can reach. This is the story of glass, and almost none of it went the way anyone expected. 700,000 years ago, a human ancestor picked up a black rock. It was smooth, it was cold, it was volcanic. When he cracked it against another stone, it split open. The edge was so sharp it drew blood before you felt it. That rock was obsidian, volcanic glass. That moment, at a site called Kariandusi in Kenya, was the first time a human held glass. Not a window, not a lens, not a screen. Just a rock that lava made when it cooled too fast for crystals to form. Glass had been on this planet for billions of years, long before any human hand ever touched it. Lightning struck sand and left hollow glass tubes behind. Meteorite impacts melted desert floors into sheets of yellow crystal. Volcanoes poured rivers of molten rock that cooled into obsidian fields stretching for miles. Nature was manufacturing glass constantly, and for hundreds of thousands of years, we used it, without ever once understanding what it actually was. So here is the question that should be eating at you right now. How did we get from that volcanic rock to the screen in your hand? The answer runs across 5,000 years and a dozen civilizations. It involves at least 3 accidents that changed the world, and a physics problem scientists are still arguing about today. But first, I need to tell you something most people get completely wrong. Glass is not a liquid. You have probably heard that old claim before. That glass flows very slowly, like a liquid in slow motion. That cathedral windows are thicker at the bottom because the glass has been oozing downward for centuries. It is a fascinating idea. It is also completely wrong. A physicist named Edgar Dutra Zanato at the Federal University of São Carlos in Brazil ran the actual calculation. He published it in the American Journal of Physics in 1998. His finding, for cathedral glass to show measurable flow at room temperature, it would take longer than the age of the universe. We are talking over 13.8 billion years. The glass in those old cathedrals is not moving. It never moved. The reason those windows are uneven is simpler. Medieval glassmakers spun molten glass into flat discs. Those discs were naturally thicker on one edge. Glaziers installed the heavy side at the bottom. That is all. The glass did not flow. It was made that way. What glass actually is turns out to be genuinely strange. It is an amorphous solid. Its atoms are arranged in a disordered pattern, like a liquid frozen in place. But it has the rigidity of a solid. It never formed a crystal structure. It skipped that step entirely. When you cool most liquids slowly, atoms line up into neat repeating grids. That is ice. That is salt. That is metal. But if you cool certain liquids fast enough, atoms never get the chance to organize. They just stop moving while still in a chaotic arrangement, permanently stuck in a moment of transition between 2 states of matter. Physicists still do not fully agree on how to classify it, and that strange in-between quality is exactly what makes glass so useful. Now, here is where this story takes a turn. Stay with me, because the next part completely changes how you see everyday life. The main ingredient in most glass is silicon dioxide. That is the primary component of ordinary sand. Pure silica melts at around 3,110 degrees Fahrenheit. Way too hot for any ancient furnace. But add a flux, a material that lowers the melting point, and the temperature drops. The ancient flux was natron, a naturally occurring mineral found in dried lake beds. Mix sand with natron, heat it to roughly 1,800 to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and the silica melts. But glass made from just sand and natron has a problem. It dissolves in rain. It is water-soluble. To fix that, you add lime from crushed limestone or seashells. The recipe: 70% silica, 15% soda, 10% lime. That formula is essentially the same one used to produce most glass on Earth today. A 5,000-year-old recipe. Still working. Nobody planned that formula. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder told a story that got repeated for 2,000 years. Phoenician merchants camping on a beach rested their pots on blocks of natron. The fire merged the natron with beach sand and molten glass flowed out. Beautiful story. Scientifically impossible. An open beach fire reaches maybe 1,100 to 1,450 degrees Fahrenheit. Nowhere near hot enough to make glass, even with natron. Pliny's story is a foundation myth, not a scientific account. The real origin is messier and much older. The earliest man-made glass objects are small beads, found in Mesopotamia and Egypt, dating to 2500 to 2300 BC, over 4,500 years ago. The leading theory: glass was a byproduct of making faience. Faience was a quartz-based decorative material, coated with a glassy glaze. When silica-rich materials mixed with alkali flux in a hot kiln, the surface sometimes vitrified. A thin layer of actual glass appeared. Someone noticed. Someone scraped it off. Someone realized it could be produced on its own. Nobody set out to invent glass. They were trying to make something else, and glass showed up anyway. That is how a surprising number of the most important inventions in history actually happened. And here is something almost nobody talks about. Egypt and Mesopotamia developed glass production independently of each other. An archaeologist named Andrew Shortland at Cranfield University published a study in 2012. He used laser ablation mass spectrometry to analyze the chemical fingerprints of ancient glass from both regions. Egyptian glass had trace element profiles consistent with Egyptian raw materials. Mesopotamian glass had completely different signatures. Two civilizations, same chemistry, same discovery, made separately. The accident was inevitable. It was just a question of where it happened first. For its first 1,000 years, glass was not something ordinary people owned. During the Late Bronze Age, roughly 1550 to 1200 BC, glass was valued alongside gold. One ruler wrote to the pharaoh saying the glass he sent was terrible. They were treating glass the way modern leaders treat rare gemstones. Because at that point in history, glass was that rare. The most important ancient glass workshop ever found was at Amarna itself. W.M. Flinders Petrie excavated it in 1891 and found glass rods, colored ingots, partially finished vessels, and furnace remains. Excavations by Paul Nicholson of Cardiff University between 2004 and 2007 confirmed a sophisticated two-stage process. Raw materials were partially melted into a mixture called frit. Then the frit was crushed and remelted at higher temperatures to produce clear, bubble-free glass. That is not craftwork. That is industrial chemistry, performed 3,400 years ago. Now, there is one piece of ancient glass that connects this story to something older than any human civilization. In 1922, Howard Carter opened the tomb of Tutankhamun. He found a carved scarab beetle, set into the king's ceremonial breastplate. For decades, archaeologists assumed it was chalcedony, a common gemstone. It was not until 1998 that Italian mineralogist Vincenzo de Michele examined it using infrared spectroscopy. The scarab was Libyan desert glass, a pale yellow-green natural glass, nearly 98% pure silica, scattered across the Sahara, on the border of Libya and Egypt. It formed roughly 29 million years ago, almost certainly from a meteorite impact or cosmic airburst that generated temperatures exceeding 3,100 degrees Fahrenheit, melting the desert sand into glass. Egyptian craftsmen found a piece of 29-million-year-old cosmic glass in the desert. They recognized its beauty, carved it into a sacred symbol, and placed it on the chest of a dead teenage king. They were working with a material formed by an event that happened tens of millions of years before any human being walked the earth, and they had absolutely no idea what it was. They just thought it was beautiful. What happened next is the moment everything changed. Glass went from treasure for kings to something every person could own, and it happened because of one breath. The earliest glass vessels were made using core forming, a technique that appeared around 1500 BC. A craftsman shaped a core of clay around a metal rod, wound hot glass around it, smoothed the surface, and scraped out the core after cooling. Each vessel took hours. It stood between 2 and 8 inches tall, used for perfumes and cosmetic oils. Beautiful, expensive, impossibly slow to make, and for over 1,500 years, that was the only method anyone had. 15 centuries, every hollow glass object on Earth, same painstaking process. Then sometime around 50 BC, On the coast of what is now Lebanon or Syria, someone put molten glass on the end of a hollow iron pipe. The invention of glass blowing is one of the most consequential moments in human history, and almost nobody ever talks about it. Before glass blowing, one glass vessel took hours. After glass blowing, a trained craftsman made dozens in a single day. Vessels became thinner, lighter, larger, and for the first time, genuinely transparent. And because production was so much faster, the price collapsed. Glass went from a luxury only royalty could afford to an everyday object that ordinary workers could own. One pipe, one breath. An entire class structure built around glass dissolved almost overnight. One of the earliest named glassmakers in history was a man called Ennion, from what is now Lebanon, active in the 1st century AD. Ennion signed his mold-blown vessels in Greek. Ennion made this. His signed pieces have been found across the entire Mediterranean, from Israel to Italy. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York holds one of his pieces today. Ennion was not just a craftsman, he was a brand. One of the first personal brand identities in manufacturing history, stamped onto a glass cup 2,000 years ago. The Romans industrialized glassblowing the way they industrialized everything. Within decades, Roman glass workshops ran from modern-day Germany to Alexandria, Egypt, mass-producing standardized bottles, cups, bowls, and storage jars. The writer Strabo, around 20 AD, noted that glass drinking vessels cost a single copper coin. Glass had gone from rivaling gold to costing less than a street food meal. And then the Romans did something with glass nobody had ever attempted. Evidence of Roman window glass has been found at Pompeii, preserved under volcanic ash from 79 AD. Small panes, thick, not perfectly clear, but they let in light while keeping out weather. Think about what that actually means. The idea of seeing through a wall is so obvious to us now that we forget someone had to invent it. The Romans did, but the most disturbing part of Roman glass history involves something modern scientists still struggle to fully explain. In 1608, a Dutch spectacle maker named Hans Lippershey filed a patent for the first telescope. The following year, Galileo built his own improved version and pointed it at Jupiter. He observed 4 moons in orbit around the planet. He published his findings in March 1610. That single observation, made through 2 curved pieces of glass, overturned the geocentric model of the universe that had stood for over 1,000 years. Everything had revolved around Earth, until someone looked through glass and proved it did not. A Dutch cloth merchant named Antony van Leeuwenhoek had no formal scientific training. He ground tiny glass lenses that achieved magnifications of up to 275 times. Using them, he became the first person in history to observe bacteria, in 1676. He called them animalcules and wrote letters to the Royal Society in London, describing what he saw. All of modern microbiology begins with a self-taught cloth dealer grinding glass in a workshop in Delft. One lens pointed at the sky, one pointed at a drop of water. Between them, they revealed that the universe was infinitely larger and infinitely smaller than anyone had imagined. Glass cracked human knowledge wide open. Now the part most people never hear about, because the glass discoveries that came next did not just change science, they changed your morning. They changed your commute. They are in your pocket right now. In 1903, French chemist Edouard Benedictus knocked a glass flask off a shelf in his laboratory. The flask hit the floor and cracked, but it did not shatter. The pieces stayed together. The flask had contained cellulose nitrate solution that evaporated, leaving a thin film coating the inside. That film held the broken glass in place. He filed a patent for laminated safety glass in 1909. First major application: gas mask lenses during World War I. Today, every car windshield in America uses a direct descendant of that accident. The next time a rock chips your windshield without it exploding into your face, that is a clumsy French chemist from 1903. In 1952, British engineer Alistair Pilkington had an idea. Pour a continuous ribbon of molten glass onto a bath of liquid tin. Tin melts at about 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Glass at that stage sits around 2,000 degrees. Because glass is less dense than liquid tin, it floats, spreading into a perfectly flat sheet under gravity. As it moves along the tin bath, it cools into a flawless ribbon with uniform thickness and fire-polished surfaces. Development took 7 years and cost roughly $20 million in today's money. Pilkington Brothers announced the float glass process on January 20, 1959. Today, over 90% of all flat glass produced worldwide uses this exact method. Every window you look through today was almost certainly made by floating liquid glass on liquid metal. In 1966, Charles Kuan-Kao, a Chinese-born British engineer working in England, published a paper proposing something his colleagues thought was absurd. Glass fibers thinner than a human hair could transmit information using light. The problem was purity. Best glass fibers at the time lost roughly 1,000 decibels of signal per kilometer. Completely useless. Kao argued the loss was not a fundamental property of glass. It was caused by impurities. Make the glass pure enough, and light could travel through it for miles. In 1970, researchers at Corning Glass Works in upstate New York produced the first practical optical fiber. That breakthrough crossed the threshold from useless to revolutionary. Someone looked closer. If this changed how you see the world around you, and I mean that literally, drop the word glass in the comments right now. And if you want the next material hiding in plain sight that quietly built everything you take for granted, you already know what to do.